All right, welcome to the first official episode of Full Circle. And I'm Chad, Cheddar Caveman on every bit of social media you can possibly find. I figure for the first official episode, we're gonna go ahead and go with the standard idea of the podcast and go over a few different model units in Circle Orboros. I'm gonna kind of give you my 2 cents worth on what I think of them, what I've played of them, where they may fit, what to expect, and so forth. And I couldn't think of a better place to start than with the Sentry Stone and Mannikin unit. So I'm going to be unprepared, but I'm going to go over what they do really quickly for everybody, just in case you don't know. So the Sentry Stone and Mannikins unit is obviously a circle unit. It consists of the Sentry Stone, which is on a medium base, and three constructs, which are on small bases, which are the Mannikins, and those are the grunts of the unit. So just real quick, and I apologize for looking down, but I need to be able to read my tablet. The Sentry Stone itself, very simple rules. The unit itself has advanced deploy. All the models in the unit are constructs, and the Sentry Stone is the officer of the unit. So it has the immobile rule, which, if you're not familiar, says the model has no movement, no combat action, can't be knocked down, moved, and it's automatically hit in melee. And then in addition, it's speed 0, strength 0, mat rat 0, it's defense 5, and armor 18, and it has 8 wounds. So it's just real quick stat line for that. The Sentry Stone is the interesting part of this unit. So it has a rule called Strange Growth, which we'll probably talk about later when we come to the Gallows Grove, or if anything else gets it. It's a rule that says it can only be placed, the only way it can move is by being placed completely within 5 inches of its current location. You can't use telekinesis, you can't use shifting stones, you can't push it, you can't throw it, it doesn't move. 5 inches every turn, it can be, and it's placement effect. Obviously a lot of pros and cons. 5 inches, not that far. It does have AD, advanced deployment, and it is a placement effect, so it doesn't care about the terrain, it doesn't care about the models that might be between it and so forth. So that part's really good. 5 inches, not so far, but as you'll see, I think it's more than sufficient. It also has the rule Prowl, which we'll talk about more here in a minute, but very simple rule. It gives the Sentry Stone stealth if it's in terrain, which provides concealment to it. And then going off of that, one of its major rules is a rule called Forest Growth. So once per turn, at any time during its activation, the model can spend a Fury Point to use Forest Growth. When it does, you center a 3-inch forest on the model, and that is a forest that remains in play for 1 round. Important note there, so obviously if you leave the Sentry Stone after placing the forest, it will grant itself stealth via its Prowl rule. So first bit of survivability there. Obviously stealth's a great rule for surviving ranged attacks and magic attacks that have a range. It's going to be the other thing to remember is that forest stays in play for a whole round. So if you kill it, if your opponent kills it, that forest is still going to be there at least until the end of their turn when you start your next turn. If you decide that you want to place the forest and then activate the Strange Growth rule, you could potentially put it behind the forest. It's a tricky interaction to get off. I haven't actually found a situation where that was the right play yet, because going backwards in this game is often not the right call, but the right situation could be there. You might be farther ahead by placing that forest, jumping back up to 5 inches, and blocking line of sight. Just for a moment too, let's talk about the forest rules with regards to and we'll go into a little more depth with this in a moment, but just a refresher for everybody on the forest rules in Mark III, for War Machine and Hordes, you can't see through. There's very few things in the game which can draw a line of sight through a forest at this point. You can ignore the concealment bonus if you have something like Eyeless Sight or True Sight, but the only things that will ignore the forest for drawing line of sight, off the top of my head, are Tree Walker and Tracker, as well as a couple one-off rules. You've got Bird's Eye from Una and Viros. You've got a Rusk 2's Feet. You have Severius' Awareness spell. There may be one or two other abilities, but they're much more rare. And forests used to be not as strong as you could see through them with things like Hunter back in Mark II. Eyeless Sight, you could see through them. So forests themselves, very, very powerful, and one of the big things that we need to keep in mind as we're talking about this unit. But to move on to talk about its rules, the one remaining rule that the Sentry Stone itself has is a rule called Wellspring, and I'm just going to do the shorthand version of it. But basically, at the beginning of the turn, if you have less than 3 Fury on this model, you can roll a d3. It gains that many additional Fury. Similarly, the unit starts with 3 Mannikin Grunts in play, which I'll talk about in a moment. If you have less than 3 of those in play when you activate this unit, you may place a Mannikin model in play that is in command. And when we start talking about tactics for this unit a little bit, that'll be very important. So for now, that's how that rule works. Real quick to talk through the Mannikins. They're pretty interesting themselves. So they're speed 6, they're mat 5, rat 4. Not too impressive there. Defense and armor 12. They're just 1 wound models. They're advanced deploy and constructs. They also have Pathfinder, much like almost everything in Circle Orboros will. As far as attacks, they have a POW 10, spray 8, or rate of fire 1 ranged attack, and that is a magic type attack. It's now damage type magical is the effect. And then they also have a melee weapon that's a 1/2 inch range that's power and strength 11. The one additional rule that they have, which makes them very good, is a rule called Fury Linked. And what that means is they can use the Fury that I just mentioned being on the Sentry Stone to boost attack or damage rolls. That's going to be pretty big when you start considering that they have a spray 8, which is a very powerful spray, even at rat 4. They have melee attacks, gives them the ability that mat 5, if they happen to be able to get a charge order off, is going to be you able to boost the hit, or if they can get into a good advantageous position and boost damage in melee, they can boost multiple hits off of a single spray. That way they can boost the damage again if that's what they need. So that's sort of the unit in its rules. And if you've been on any forum, social media, anything, you'll really see that this is a unit that is showing up in, I would say, 90% or better circle lists right now. The first reason that's happening, I neglected actually to mention that their point cost, they're a 5-point unit and they're field allowance 2. So rarely, my advice is if you're playing them or if you're seeing them across the table, if you don't play Circle, you want to see both. You want both units in your list. It's going to be really important because a 3-inch forest for blocking line of sight is okay, especially when you couple it potentially with some other terrain on the table. A 6-inch forest is, I mean, this sounds obvious, but it's probably more than the twice as good that it is. 6 inches is going to provide you with enough of a place to hide to put relevant solos, a heavy, possibly a couple light war beasts, a couple medium bases. And if you can couple that with some additional terrain from either the caster being able to produce it, which Circle does have quite a few of, and we'll talk about those at a later time, or the terrain on the table, as Mark III, we expect more terrain being played. So that's the first reason you take it. The next thing, though, is that the... and I apologize, I think I went through this quickly, but to put that forest in play, it costs a single Fury off of the stone. You're guaranteed every turn to have at least one Fury on that stone because of the rule giving you a D3. So even if you don't hold over any from the previous turn, you'll always have one Fury. You can always, at bare minimum, center that forest on the Sentry stone. Where they really start getting in, though, is that not only are they providing you with a defensive bunker that I think is very important in Mark III. There are things out in the game like Kara Sloan, who ignores stealth, who ignores concealment. Same for Kane, Kane 2. Same for a few other pretty strong answers. Tristan Durant, who's coming out, Durant 2. Also giving out True Sight to his battle group, and so forth. There are a lot of effects in the game now which ignore stealth and a few of the other defensive abilities. There are very, very few that ignore that for us. So you want to bring it. You want to use those to keep your caster safe. You want to use that to force your opponent to have to come over and put something into that model that is more than the 5 to 10 points that it costs. And in some matchups, that's really all it has to be able to do. And if it can do that and sort of set you up with some good trades early, it's done its work. Where it really, really starts to shine is those Mannikins being able to use those sprays extremely effectively. So one thing that this unit, has, is it has one of the things that is unusual about it is that, and sorry, I'm trying to pull up, see if I have anybody on the chat, and it's not letting me do that. Oh, nobody in the chat. Sorry. One of the things that it's able to do is activate those Mannikins when they're put into play. So they're not put into play during your maintenance phase. They're not put into play during your control phase. They're put into play when you activate that unit. So this gives you some flexibility. If you need to, you can kill a Mannikin yourself to put it in a more advantageous spot. They have the ability to aim. Obviously very strong, taking their Rat 4 up to Rat 6, and that's a big jump. Rat 6 means now you're hitting defense 12 decently reliably, defense 13 not, you're still at 7s, which is pretty good, and then as you go up, you're probably looking to boost with the Fury that you have on the Sentry Stone. It can be with the base size of the Mannikin and the command 6 on the Sentry Stone, and the Sentry Stone is the officer for the unit, you can place a Mannikin that is essentially, it's just a little over 7 inches away from the Sentry Stone, and then it can walk an additional 6 and spray 8. So you're looking at a threat of it's right around 21 inches. It's not going to always be the right play to use, but it is one of the decent ways Circle has to reach out and touch some of those troublesome solos. I've played games where they've earned their points back on turn 2 by boosting a spray into Epic Iris and Kelbaylock, who are both 5+ point solos, and they earn their points back right there. So and they were still able to stay in a decent position in that particular game. But they're able to do a lot of things like that. If you can back them up with any sort of buff to their attacks, particularly ranged, anything that's going to lower the defense, lower the relevant stat on the infantry type models that are coming in. The sprays are very, very good at killing infantry, no surprise there. With pre-measuring, you're able to, one thing everybody should really be taking advantage of and watching out for is you can now just set the spray, don't move your guy, set the spray template down where it's going to get the juiciest number of targets, use a proxy base, see if you can walk to that position, make sure you're not in melee, of course, and you can get a much better spray. In Mark II, you kind of had to eyeball it. A lot of times you're like, oh man, I think I can get 4 or 5 models. You'd end up getting 1 to 2. just because you were off a little bit from what it looked like. That problem isn't there anymore, so make sure you're taking advantage of it. At Rat 4, POW 10, their ability to aim is very important. The backstrike rules are very important here too, because you can place the model. It can end up being behind other models that they have and get sprays off. Any sort of buff to the relevant thing that they need for the infantry they're dealing with. So if you've got high defense infantry, any sort of debuff for their defense is going to be big. If it's high armor, anything that helps you ignore that or increase your damage is going to be huge. One of the best spells with them actually is Affliction on Tanith, and we'll talk about her at another time too. But that both reduces the defense of the models and automatically does 1 point of damage. So most single wound troops coming into that are not going to be too happy. There's a lot of factions that like to do things like stacking a lot of armor buffs on their models to keep them safe, and you can just ignore that. There are a few other debuffs that work. Curse of Shadows on Wormwood and Mosar, as well as you might be able to get some use out of Scything Touch from Tanith as well. It's Dark Shroud, -2 armor to the things in melee with the model that has it. That's kind of the extent of the debuffs off the top of my head. They couple decently well if you happen to bring Megalith. His Undergrowth Animus, reducing defense by 2 within 5 inches of him, which kind of gives you, depending on the positioning, you can get almost 12 inches out of that. You won't always, but you could. And similarly, the Argus Moonhound, who we may talk about here in a little bit, he's going to reduce defense for ranged attack, or he's going to increase your ranged attack's ability to hit by 2 for models within 5 inches of it as well. Very, very good unit. They're great at chipping in extra damage. A boosted POW 10 into even something that's as high as armor 19, 20, maybe 21. You could spike a roll. And really the whole game you're going to be able to get one out. And this is a unit that I really think, if you're playing Circle, at least until any, we're talking about Circle as it is today. This is a unit that is probably so good. I've heard a lot of people talk about it possibly getting an errata. I don't know that it will. I don't know that it won't. We'll revisit if it does. I'm not expecting any changes to the game probably till December, January timeframe, I would say. So the Sentry Stone and Mannikin unit, great unit. 10 points total in your list. Not that much to ask. It's actually cheaper than it was in Mark II. By that math, it was 3 points in Mark II. Forests much stronger, and the ability really to bring both some protection and some infantry clearing work in really any of your lists. Let's go ahead and talk about another model, something I kind of mentioned in this one, and probably one we're not hearing quite as much of. Sorry, I'm getting used to how this works, but we will go ahead and talk about the Argus Moonhound. This guy, Light Warbeast, he is very, very similar to what he was in Mark II, if you were familiar with him then, but we'll go over him real quick. He's 6 points, speed 6, so the Argus chassis from Mark II to Mark III went from being speed 7, and a couple other stats changed as well, to speed 6. And we'll just go, and their defensive stats changed a little bit, so we'll go over it. Anyway, speed 6, Mat 5, Rat 4. The Rat's not going to really matter here, he doesn't have a ranged attack. Defense and armor 14 for both, and he has Pathfinder. Fury 3, Threshold 9. Thresholds hopefully don't come off too often, but Circle does tend to, from what I see, they have a little bit higher threshold for a lot of their models. He has, I believe, 21 hitboxes. I'm not going to count the spiral right now. Two initials in melee, both at POW 11. You're getting all that for 6 points. He has circular vision, which all the Argus models share. It prevents them from getting another model getting the backstrike bonus against them. The important thing, the real money with this model are the next two things though. First, it has mark target. No, used to have it though. Which says other friendly faction models get +2 to ranged attack rolls against enemy models that are within 5 inches of it and its line of sight. In addition, its animus is called Hunting Howls, which is cost 1, ranged stealth. Enemy models that within 5 inches, or that are within, while they're within 5 inches of it, lose stealth. Pardon me. So a couple just important notes about those. Obviously, I think the biggest reason you're going to want to bring this, you're not going to want to bring this model probably unless you have some other ranged elements in your army. I've played it a bit, not a ton. I'm mostly paired up with Reeves of Orboros, which we'll go over at another time. But the Hunting Howls and the Mark the Target are absolutely the biggest reasons you want to bring this model. It's 6 points. That is our cheapest war beast. There are solos in our faction that cost 6 points. There are minion solos that cost 6 points. There are in War Machine there's solos that cost more than that. We have things like Banelord Tartarus costing 8 and Iris costing 7. So he's really cheap. He has access to boosts, and he has 2 initial melees. So and Pathfinder, so he can get where he needs to go. You're still probably, I probably still wouldn't bring him without some sort of ranged element to the game, or to your list rather. He's that mark target ability on him is, I would say that needs to be your chief reason you're bringing it. We don't have a ton of ranged attacks, but we do have some. We do have some that are really great. We just talked about the Sentry Stone and Mannikins. If you have, you're probably going to have those in most of your lists. I don't know that I would. You don't need the Moonhound to. If you just have the Sentry Stone, I don't think I would invest another 6 points in the Moonhound. It kind of is defeating the purpose of the point cost differential there. But if you start adding more additional ranged attacks in your list, this guy's a great value. So I've in the list when I've played him, it was really to take advantage of that mark target ability. So you want to be looking at I think it couples pretty well with sprays. Most sprays are a little shorter range. You can position him to get that mark target to hit most of, if not all of, the models that you want to hit with a spray. Notable amongst them, the Pureblood Warpwolf is probably the best spray off the top of my head. The Celestial Fulcrum, which I played a lot in Mark II. I haven't really played in Mark III yet. I'll try to do that so I can have more conversation points around it, because I think it's a really interesting piece. The Winter Argus, again, I played a little bit in Mark II. I haven't put it on the table yet in Mark III. I'm not sure with some of its changes that it's as appealing now as it used to be, but we'll maybe talk about that down the road. The Mannikins have sprays, as I said, and I think I'm forgetting a couple others. And then we have, of course, just regular ranged attacks. The upcoming Storm Raptor. We have a few Warlocks with ranged attacks like Kruger 1 and 2. We have Una. Great for her. She may, when you've got to clear off the front of your line, I found using the Moonhound, she can aim up to Rat 10, which lets her boost damage if she needs to, or do something else. And then the Moonhound could probably move after that and still give some of the other ranged elements in your list a buff to that marked target, or using that marked target. Another couple pieces to keep in mind. Pathfinder, very important. We don't actually, the light war beasts in our faction are almost universally have Pathfinder or better, flight in the case of the Griffins. But a lot of the heavies don't. So something to keep in mind, it just is you're going to be able to get them in places that you may not be able to get some of the other models in the faction. And with that, just don't forget that he has it. They used, I believe in Mark II they also had it, but the other Arguses did not. Now they all do. So just keep that little bit in mind. The Animus, the losing stealth, a lot of press and hype was given to the Wild Argus, when Mark III hit because of its Animus. And its Animus is very good, and we will absolutely discuss that more. I've actually played the Moonhound a bit more in my testing in Mark III, which is why I chose to do it earlier. And it is the one big important difference is with the Moonhound, its Animus is a while within 5 inches of it, which means it's an aura for those of you who think of that. So real quick, for anybody who's not familiar, aura, as it sounds like, is an effect that continuously is affecting models within the model that is causing the aura to be present. A pulse is, it happens right now. The things that are within whatever the range is at the time of the pulse are affected, and if they're not, it doesn't matter. So the Wild Argus, as it's called in Mark III, I'll talk about later, its Animus is a pulse. The Moonhound's Animus is not, is an aura. The important piece of that is he can activate his Animus and then charge something. And when he gets 9 inches, 9 inches barring any speed buff, it doesn't matter if he succeeds on his charge or not. If the model you wanted was within 5 inches when he stopped, it's gonna lose. It's not gonna have stealth until that Argus moves or it's dead, or it moves away. So that gives you 14 inches that you can turn off stealth, and that you can put that marked target out there. So now you can turn stealth off. Now you can put marked target out there. This is going to enable a lot of really strong plays from things like the Celestial Fulcrum, the Reeves, who have range 12 guns, the Druid Wold Stalkers, which have range 10 and the ability to Zephyr. You've got things like the Wold Weird, the Wold Watcher has a gun, Storm Raptor has a gun, Wold Wrath has a gun, a few of our casters, and so forth. So in addition to making you more accurate, those stealth models really have to watch out. And then this guy's, like I said, only 6 points, so you may be able to trade him for their, for a couple expensive solos, maybe a whole unit of stealth troops, or half a unit of stealth troops even. You're probably making bank with this guy. Incredible value. I haven't seen this popping up in a lot of the competitive lists being played. I've played him. I had him with Wormwood a bit early on. I've had it with Tanith. I've got some ideas for playing it with Kaya 1. Spirit Door is a very strong ability. Again, you can fail that charge, go out there, turn off stealth, give your army the boost to hit. She can cast Spirit Door, bring it back. You can use it again if you need to. I was very surprised. I was very happy with it when it was buffed as well. So putting any of our living Warbeast Primal is a great effect. So that Mat 5 Rat 4 doesn't matter. That Mat 5 POW 11 going up to Mat 7 POW 13. It's pretty big. Especially if you can get a charge in. It's not gonna hit as hard in melee as the Wild Argus or the Winter Argus, but it is certainly going to be able to contribute. And for 6 points, you're getting a pretty decent bargain out of it. I would say adding in, and if you can add in another buff, a pair of POW 15 initials, and either being able to buy 3 more attacks or 2 boosts and an extra attack or something of that effect is going to be really good. Don't have a lot more to say here. Certainly we'll revisit this if I have a compelling list with it coming up in the future, or if there's other compelling lists, or if there's any changes really to what it does. But the Moonhound is definitely a great piece to have in your army. I definitely recommend trying it if you want to take some more ranged models out for a spin. Don't try to put it in every list though. Just because you have ranged attacks, unless it's really your plan, you may not need a Moonhound. Don't feel like, well, it's, my ranged attacks don't work without it. They do, but if you've got enough of them, definitely give that guy a try. coming up here on about a half hour. I think we'll go ahead and talk about one, maybe two more models in this episode, and then we'll call it there. So let's talk about another war beast. We will talk about the Pureblood. Oops. Here we are. The Pureblood Warpwolf. This guy, very similar to what he was in Mark II, but let me kind of go over what he does. He speeds he shares many of the characteristics of the other Warpwolves in the faction. So he's speed 6, he's mat 6, he's defense 14, armor. He's rat 5. It's important in his case. He's defense 14, he's armor 17. He has a very high threshold of 10, and he is Fury 4. Additionally, like all Warpwolves, I'm getting ahead of myself. He has 2 initial melee attacks. They're both power and strength 14, and he has a spray 10, pow 14 that is damage type magical, called the Death Howler, and they're 17 points. So, and those melee attacks are as all heavies now in Mark III has 1-inch melee. Additionally, he has assault, which a lot of more models do. It means if he charges, he can additionally make a spray attack, or make his spray attack at the target he's charging. And of course, those 2 weapons, as you can see, open hands. Looking at the back of his card, first we're going to see his Animus Wraithbane. Again, can be pretty important. Friendly faction models weapons gain blessed, which means they're going to ignore any benefit to armor or defense as long as it's a direct benefit. You wouldn't ignore something like, if a spell is granting concealment, you don't ignore that, because the spell's giving concealment gives a bonus. But if you have, if the opponent has a model that has, say, Arcane Shield in Signar, that's granting the model +3 armor, Wraithbane's going to let whatever model you put it on ignore it. That Animus costs 2. Like all Warpwolves, he has controlled warping, so he has warp strength. They all do. In addition, he has Ghostly, which is pretty important. Ghostly lets you ignore any terrain. You can walk through obstructions and obstacles, not models, but you do ignore free strikes from any models, which can be really important when you're getting jammed up and you really need to make that spray at something. He can also warp for Spell Ward. It means he can't be targeted by any spells. And be careful when warping for this, because that includes himself. Quick tip: if you warp Spell Word, he can't actually activate and put his Animus on himself anymore, because of how that works now. And one more quick rule, and it is relevant. All the Warpwolves have regeneration D3, so they can force and heal D3 damage once per turn. And I believe again, I'm not going to count it. I believe he has 28 hit points. Might be 27. I think it's 28 though. So the things here is that's almost 100% the same model as Mark II. In Mark II, he had an additional rule that said other Warpwolves within his command of 6 or 7 could also use Warp Ghostly. He's lost that in this edition, which I think is probably fine. There's certainly a couple instances now that I'm playing a few of the other Warpwolves where I've felt like it would be a good thing to have, but for now, I don't think that's a big loss. At 17 points, definitely in the premium heavy range, but not overly expensive. He's a little cheaper than he was in Mark II. The big piece here is he's bringing that spray, which is going to give you utility through the whole game. In addition, he can warp strength, which will take him up to power strength 16. We can bring primal on any list, which is going to bring him up to 18. So that's all a lot of really good access to buffs. Assault is huge on this guy. He now has a threat range of 19 inches on a spray. That's going to enable a lot of last ditch assassinations when you may need them. It's going to let you dig real deep to hit that annoying solo, that annoying really whatever. I've surprised people and killed their Journeyman Warcaster in Signar. Definitely don't want to see that happen, and a boost of POW 14 is not a thing they're going to usually live through. With being able to warp Ghostly, it gives him Pathfinder kind of when he needs it, at the penalty of not being able to warp Strength, which if you're going in a heavy target can definitely be a big problem. But being able to get that spray when you need it is going to be a pretty good effect to look out for there. I really like putting the Pureblood in lists now, and as I said, he didn't change much, but that 1 inch, the half-inch to 1 inch melee range, which we'll talk about as we talk about most of these heavies, is actually really important. You wouldn't think that extra half-inch made that much of a difference, but it really does. Now it's not so, you're not losing 1.5 inches compared to a Reach model was a much bigger detriment. Now it's only 1 inch. This guy's contributing a spray the whole game. It's definitely going to be a piece that you want to have. I like it because you may bring the Feral to be your heavy hitter in a list, to bring Primal, and this guy can contribute the whole game until you need to send him in on a big target. And that's really his advantage to me, and I think you're going to see him in a lot of lists. Bringing Wraithbane's great, situational I would say, but the fact that this guy in a Gorax or a Feral in a list is going to give you access to a pretty hard-hitting heavy that can contribute before he does that and really get you up on attrition that way. 14-17, great stat line, unless your opponent has a lot of really lucky dice, because the armor is lower, so you're relying on the defense to keep you a little bit more alive, and other defensive measures like hiding behind terrain and so forth. But you're really gonna, so if their dice are getting hot in any one direction, you're in a little more trouble. That's kind of a common problem Circle has, but 14 is, most things are mat 6, mat 7. That's pretty high for hit, so on average they're missing you a lot. Armor 17 is a decent armor stat. It's a little on the low side for a heavy, but not when coupled with that defense defense 14. Anything that buffs either of those stats is going to be great. You're looking at Kruger 1 can take his defense up to 17. Baldur 2 can take his armor to 20, and that may not sound like much, but when you couple that with defense 14 and a few other effects, very strong. I would definitely be considering these guys. Like I said, potentially focus with the Moonhound. You go up to Rat 7 on those sprays, you can get a lot of work done there. Somebody like a Morvana 2 being able to assault these guys with the rerolls is going to be tough to stop for a lot of lists, and they're really going to have to look out. Kaya 2 loves these. They can go out there, feet, come back, do some more sprays. Like, very strong piece. And as I've mentioned before, sprays are very strong in this edition. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping up. Anybody who listened or who does watch later on YouTube, I appreciate it very much. Next time we'll talk about some more of the things in Circle that I've been playing. We'll just talk through some more models and see what I have to say about them and give a little bit of feedback. If there's any questions, feel free to leave comments on this. I didn't see any chat for this because it's early and nobody knows that I'm doing this yet. But feel free to leave some comments on YouTube, and on Twitter and on Facebook. Cheddar Caveman on the Private Ship Press forums, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Definitely appreciate any feedback anybody has, as this is pretty new for me. Real quick, I almost forgot. I want to mention my sponsor, Griffin's Roost Painting. The models you saw are my models that are painted by Griffin's Roost Painting. It's my wife's painting company. Sorry. If you have any interest in getting anything painted by her, check out griffinsroostpainting.com or Griffin's Roost Painting on Facebook, and you can get in touch with her there. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.